For years, most of us have heard the same wellness advice. The best workout is the one you do first thing in the morning. Early exercise is supposed to boost your metabolism, burn more fat, and set the tone for the rest of your day. But when researchers started measuring exercise timing against long term health outcomes, they found something that completely reframes that advice. Welcome to Longevity Lab. I'm Claire.
And I'm Robert. Claire, this one already feels personal because I have been an early morning exerciser for about 20 years. My alarm goes off at 5:45. I drink a little black coffee and I train before breakfast.
And I love that commitment. That kind of consistency is one of the most valuable things in all of health.
Thank you. But now you are telling me my 5:45 session might not be the biological sweet spot?
I am saying that the old certainty is wrong. This episode is not about making you feel bad for training in the morning. It is about showing you what your circadian biology actually does during exercise and how you can use that knowledge.
Because I have to be honest, if I search the internet for the best time to exercise, every article seems to shout, morning, morning, morning. I thought science had already settled it.
Most people assume that. And here is the finding that surprised me most when I first came across it. In a large study that followed over 90,000 adults, people who did most of their moderate to vigorous activity in the afternoon or evening had lower risks of dying from heart disease over the follow-up period than people who did most of it in the morning. But, and this is crucial, the people who were least active had the highest risk by far.
So the real problem was not morning versus afternoon. The real problem was not moving much at all.
Exactly. The biggest difference is between moving and not moving. But if you have a choice, timing can be a small but real lever.
Okay, so let me go back to something I have believed for years. I always thought fasted morning cardio was the best fat loss strategy. Is that part of the myth too?
That is a perfect example of a kernel of truth that got turned into a marketing slogan. When you train before eating, your body does oxidize more fat during that specific session. But research shows that across the full day, your body often compensates. Total fat balance is not dramatically better just because you exercised on an empty stomach. And for many people, fasted morning exercise means lower intensity, less enjoyment, or worse performance.
So I might have been proud of my fasted sweat session, but the science was less impressed than I thought.
It was still movement, that counts. But the idea that fasted morning cardio is a magical fat loss switch is not supported by the evidence.
Right. Then why would afternoon or evening exercise be better for heart health?
Let's start with the master clock inside your brain. It is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it sits just above the roof of your mouth. That clock coordinates billions of cells throughout your body. Your muscles, liver, pancreas, and even your blood vessels all have their own peripheral clocks. Those tiny clocks follow a daily rhythm.
So my muscles know what time it is?
In a way, yes. Your muscle cells express clock genes that control energy use, repair, and contraction. Researchers sometimes call this the muscle clock. That is why exercise at different times of day can produce different biological responses.
I had no idea muscles had their own schedule. It sounds like a little factory with a shift change.
That's a great way to picture it. Think of your muscles as a factory that runs different tasks at different hours. In the morning, the factory is warming up. In the late afternoon, most people's core body temperature peaks, nerve signaling becomes faster, reaction time improves, and muscle force output rises.
So that old saying about being warmed up later in the day is real biology?
Very real. Core body temperature is one of the biggest drivers. Your internal thermostat is lowest in the early morning hours, often around 4 a.m. By the late afternoon or early evening, it rises by about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. Warmer muscles have more flexible connective tissue. Enzyme activity increases, oxygen delivery can improve. That combination means strength, power, and endurance often peak in the late afternoon or early evening.
This is already making me rethink my whole gym schedule. But I have to ask, if afternoon is so great, why did the whole world decide morning was best?
Because morning exercise has one enormous advantage: it is easier to protect. Most people have fewer work meetings, fewer family obligations, and fewer distractions before the day begins. So, when researchers study real world adherence, morning exercisers often stick with it more consistently.
That makes complete sense. I never miss my morning session because nobody is asking me for anything at 5:45.
Exactly. And consistency may beat perfect timing. But the myth came from taking a practical advantage and turning it into a biological law. The truth is that your best performance time is partly personal, partly circadian, and partly practical.
So if I keep my morning workout, I am not making a terrible mistake.
You are not. But you might be leaving a small amount of performance or metabolic benefit on the table. Let's look at what the research can actually tell us.
Please, what does the evidence say?
There was a 2022 analysis published in Nature Communications that used data from the UK Biobank. The researchers followed more than 90,000 adults for about 7 years using wrist worn accelerometers. They looked at when people did most of their moderate to vigorous physical activity.
And they found the afternoon group did better?
They found that people who accumulated most of their activity in the afternoon or evening had lower all cause mortality and lower cardiovascular disease mortality compared with people who were mainly active in the morning. But again, the biggest risk was in the least active group.
Okay, that is a pretty big data set. And these were not people doing controlled laboratory workouts. This was real life.
Right. That is the strength of the study. It was not a small lab experiment, it was tens of thousands of people living their normal lives. And the researchers could still see a timing signal.
So the common advice was actually hiding a more interesting story. The body has a preferred time window, but the health industry flattened it into one rule.
That's a lovely way to say it. The evidence does not say morning exercise is bad. It says that if you can choose, afternoon and evening movement might give your heart and metabolism a slightly bigger return.
I have to admit that stops me, and I am the audience here. What else changes inside the body that makes this happen?
Another key mechanism is insulin sensitivity. Your muscle cells are usually more responsive to insulin in the late afternoon and early evening. Insulin is the hormone that helps move sugar out of your blood and into your muscles.
So if I exercise when my muscles are already more insulin sensitive, I might get a bigger blood sugar benefit?
Yes. Some studies find that afternoon or evening exercise produces larger improvements in blood glucose control and insulin sensitivity than identical morning exercise. That is especially relevant for people with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes.
And for heart health?
Blood pressure follows a daily rhythm too. It often drops at night while you sleep and rises before you wake. Exercise can lower blood pressure for hours afterward, a phenomenon called post-exercise hypotension. Some research suggests afternoon exercise may produce a slightly longer or deeper drop in certain groups, but the evidence is still mixed.
So the heart story is not one single mechanism. It is blood sugar, blood pressure, vascular function, and perhaps inflammation all moving together.
Exactly. And let me add one more piece. Cortisol, the stress hormone, naturally rises in the early morning. That is part of what wakes you up. Some people love training with that morning cortisol rise. Others feel stiff, tired, or more injury prone.
Now I am thinking about my knees at 5:45. They do feel creaky.
That is your connective tissue telling you it has not fully warmed up. Later in the day, joint fluid is usually better distributed and muscle compliance improves. Injury rates in some sports are slightly lower during afternoon and evening training.
Okay, so I want to make sure I am not oversimplifying. The science is not saying everyone should cancel morning workouts. It is saying the old one size rule is incomplete.
Perfect. If you love morning exercise and you are consistent, keep going. But if you have a choice and you want to optimize performance or metabolic health, try shifting some hard sessions later.
What should a listener actually do today?
Let's make it practical. First, match the time to your goal. If your goal is strength, power, or high intensity performance, late afternoon may give you a small edge. That is when core temperature, muscle force, and coordination tend to peak.
And if someone's goal is blood sugar control,
Then the evidence leans toward afternoon or early evening movement. A 2022 meta-analysis in Frontiers in Physiology looked at trials involving people with type 2 diabetes and found that exercise performed after midday produced larger reductions in hemoglobin A1C and insulin resistance than morning sessions.
hemoglobin A1C. Explain that for me.
It is a blood test that reflects your average blood sugar over the previous 2 to 3 months. Lower is generally better if you are managing metabolic health.
So the timing effect was not just a tiny lab measurement. It showed up in a marker doctors actually use.
Yes. And for people without diabetes, the effect may be smaller, but the pattern is still worth knowing.
What about for blood pressure or older adults like me?
There is not one perfect clock for everyone. Some studies show morning aerobic exercise helps older adults lower nighttime blood pressure, while afternoon exercise may improve other aspects of vascular function. This is where individual variation matters.
So the responsible message is to try a time, measure how your body responds, and talk with your doctor if you have a condition.
Absolutely. And if you have hypertension, diabetes, heart failure, or any medical condition, it is definitely a conversation to have with your clinician before shifting your routine substantially.
Good. That feels safer. Now, what about the person who is simply exhausted and confused by all of this?
That person should hear one thing above all else. The best exercise time is the one you can repeat. If morning is the only time that survives your daily chaos, morning is your answer.
I feel seen.
Good. But there is one more strategy that is deeply underrated and supported by research. It is not about morning or afternoon. It is about right after meals.
The post-meal walk.
Yes. A short walk of 10 to 15 minutes within the first 30 minutes after eating can help blunt the rise in blood sugar after a meal. That is especially helpful after dinner when many people tend to sit for hours.
Why does that work?
When you walk, your muscles contract and pull glucose out of the blood without needing as much insulin. That contraction-stimulated glucose uptake works regardless of the time of day. It is one of the most reliable, low-effort ways to improve metabolic health.
So even if I keep my 5:45 workout, I could add a 10-minute walk after dinner and get a metabolic benefit that morning exercise might have missed.
Exactly. That is an empowering, achievable change.
But what would you say to someone who loves the idea of afternoon exercise, but genuinely cannot fit it in?
I would say stop chasing perfection. Move during the time that belongs to you. Maybe that means a 20-minute walk at lunch, a longer session on weekends, or bodyweight exercises in the evening. The research on timing is a refinement, not a requirement.
So the real rule is not morning versus afternoon. It is more like movement at any time, But if you have flexibility, align hard sessions with your biological peak.
That is a beautiful summary. And there is one final piece of evidence I want to share. This is the case study moment.
Go on.
Think about traditional blue zone communities, places like Sardinia or Okinawa where people live long, healthy lives. They rarely wake up at 5 a.m. to do high intensity interval training. Instead, they move naturally throughout the entire day. They walk to gardens, carry groceries, climb stairs, and often stroll after meals.
So they are not wedded to a single workout time. They are simply moving all day.
Right. When researchers study those communities, they do not find one perfect exercise hour. They find a continuous pattern of movement woven into daily life. That may be the most underrated longevity habit of all.
That reframes exercise as something I can sprinkle through my day instead of treating it like a single appointment I either hit or miss.
Exactly. And for our listeners, that is the real takeaway. If you have a hard workout, late afternoon might give you a small performance or metabolic boost. If you have a choice about aerobic activity, late day movement may be especially good for heart health. But the foundation is consistent movement, ideally spread across your day.
I think many people will feel relieved. They have been told that if they do not work out before breakfast, they have somehow failed.
That guilt is part of wellness marketing. It is not what the science says. The science says your body is not a machine with one magic time. It is a rhythmic system, and you can work with your rhythm.
Okay, so let's turn this into something I can remember.
Here is the rule: train when you can, walk after meals, and if you want an edge in strength or blood sugar, try moving some sessions to the afternoon or early evening. But never let perfect timing stop you from moving at all.
I love that. And I will be honest, I am not giving up my 5:45 strength sessions because they keep me consistent. But I'm going to add a short evening walk after dinner, and I'm going to experiment with one afternoon session on the weekend to see how my body feels.
That is a perfect real world plan. You are keeping the habit that works and using the science to add one low effort, high reward behavior.
And listeners, if this episode surprised you, it might surprise someone you love. We would love for you to subscribe to Longevity Lab so you never miss a daily myth busting episode.
Yes, we put out new episodes every day, and our goal is to make health science feel clear, useful, and never scary. If you found this valuable, please share it with a friend who has been forcing themselves to work out before sunrise.
Because maybe, just maybe, their body has been asking for a different time all along.
And now you know how to listen. I'm Claire.
And I'm Robert. Thanks for moving through this with us. We will see you tomorrow.